It's Monday, July 9th. Welcome to Pastor Bob Daily. So I asked many of you about this sign above me right here. And if you knew where it was from, and nobody guessed it, I'm amazed. Well, this is the sign that hung outside of Pachyderm recording studios in the 80s and early 90s. John and Dino Elefante's studios, where a whole lot of the melodic metal bands were recorded. Barren Cross, Deliverance, many others. Also, the first Vengeance album. Gosh, there were so many. Mastodon, Petra, many. But this is a sign that hung in front so that people wouldn't know that it was actually the recording studio. And anyway, when they moved the studio to Tennessee, they gave me the sign, and that's where it's from. So it's kind of a historical monument from the 80s and early 90s. There you go. Well, my father suggested actually that I do this podcast today, and I think it's a great idea, kind of as a follow-up to what I talked about 2 days ago. And, you know, folks, it's so important that we not believe the negative input that people have in our lives. And if you remember, I had a message from a friend who said that he felt like he was good for nothing because everybody told him he was a failure. And his family even told him that. And how horrible that was. And, you know, it really affected my father because he really takes great pride in the way that he's raised his family. And I appreciate that. And here's one scripture that he's used with me many times, and he's lived this scripture. And it's Proverbs 22:6. That says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's older, he'll not depart from it. Now, you've probably heard that scripture many times, but you probably have not interpreted it correctly. Let me give it to you from the Amplified Bible. This is closer to the original language, and it really describes what it's saying. It says, train up a child in the way he should go, and in keeping with his individual gift or bent, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. A literal, very literal translation is train up a child in the way that he is bending. Well, that's very different. There's all kinds of parents out there that are training their child, you know, to follow the Bible, and you better do the right things. And you'll appreciate this when you get older, because when you get older, you'll be following the Lord, and you'll say, man, I'm so glad my parents were tough on me. That doesn't work always, does it? In fact, it doesn't usually work. There are a whole lot of people, and you may be one of them, who are not excited about the Christian faith today because of how they were raised by overcritical and over-legalistic Christian parents. Well, this has nothing to do with that. It says, train up a child in the way that he's bending, or in keeping with his individual gift or bent. In other words, what is your child becoming? Now, this is interesting. There are 3 of us boys in the family. I'm the oldest. My brother Tim is 4 years younger. My brother Tracy is the caboose. He's 14 years younger. And, you know, all of us are very different from each other. Now, when I was growing up, I started playing music. And I played music at a very young age, and listened to music at a young age. As soon as I was walking, I was dancing. And I loved records, and I loved listening to everything from Tchaikovsky when I was 3, 4, 5 years old to whatever the hits were. Always listening to music. And so my parents, when I was very young, 4 or 5 years old, bought a piano, started playing that, and excelled at it. Before too long, I was playing for Sunday school, and then when I was in junior high, playing for church. And then went on to play the piano for a lot of things. And I always appreciated that. So they always kind of pushed me. Every year I got a different instrument for my birthday and learned how to play it. But the other thing that they did was encouraging me to be a pastor. When I was 5 years old, I became a Christian. When I was 6, I really started bending towards being a pastor. And we used to go to church, and when we come home from church, I would actually have another church service ready sometimes. And they'd have to listen to my preaching, and I'd play the piano and lead the singing, and then preach, and then have the prayer, and then we could eat. And so, but they tolerated that, and they knew that's what I was doing, and that they knew that's how I was bending, and they helped me bend in those areas. My brother Tim was always good with finances, with business. They helped him bend in that area. He's successful in that today. My brother Tracy was always good with computers, and they bought him, when computers first started coming out, bought him the computers. And these days, you wouldn't believe the things that he's done with computers. There's a NASA dish in his front yard. So, that's what it's all about. It's training up a child in the way that he's bending and paying attention to what he's becoming. Well, some of you are saying, I'm just a kid myself. It doesn't really apply to me. Yeah, it does. When you get married, when you start raising a family, would you remember this scripture? And you have a responsibility to help your child bend in the right direction. Some of you are young parents right now. You're doing it just in time. And some of you have older children, and you need to begin to pay attention to what they're becoming and helping them. One of the things that I hear most often from people, young people, is I don't know what I want to do in my life. And folks, that shouldn't be. Your parents should be helping you figure out how you're bending. So I hope that helps you. And Dad, thank you for this recommendation as well. God bless you. Have a great day.